So we're going to talk about writing an exponential equation through 2 points. And so I'm going to write some steps down so you kind of have something to refer to. Frozen here. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is plug in the point 0a. We're dealing with the equation y equals a times b to the x. Then after you do that, you're going to plug in the other point. And then the last thing we're going to do is solve for b. Alright, so let's take a look at this first one. So I'm going to be giving you an initial condition, or the y-intercept, which is my a. That's what I mean by the point 0a. So in this example, that's the point 0.6.4. So step 1, I'm going to plug that in. So I know my equation is y equals 6.4 times b to the x. Step 2, you're going to be given a second point. In this case, the point 3/100. So the first point I'm going to plug in for x, and the second I'm going to plug in for y. So I do that, and I have the equation 100 equals 6.4 times times b to the third. Okay. Last chapter we did solving things like this. So I'm going to divide both sides by 6.4. How do I undo the third power? Cubed root, or the 1/3. Yep. So you are going to need a calculator. So first we divide both sides by 6.4. And I get 15.625. I'm not going to round that. And then I'm going to take the cubed root, which I taught you there's 2 ways you can do that. There is a cubed root button on your calculator, or you can also use the 1/3 exponent. That cancels these exponents, and we should be left with b. So I get 2.5. Would you confirm that you get that for the cubed root of 15.625? Okay, so I now know both my a and my b. My exponential equation or function is y equals 6.4 times 2.5 to the x. Okay. Let's look at the one right below it. Kristen starts an experiment with 7,500 bacteria cells. Okay. This word starts means at what time does that happen? If you're going to give time a number and it's right when it starts, what would you give that number? Okay, I'll let you think about that. Then you're also given after 4 hours, there's 23,000 cells. So what I'm giving you now are like your 2 different points. The starting point is like the point 0.7500, and after 4 hours there's 23,000 cells. That's a second point on the curve. Okay, so let's plug in our A. We have y equals 7,500 times b to the x. Now we're going to plug in our point. So I have 23,000 equals 7,500 times b to the fourth. Let's figure out b. So first I divide both sides by 7,500. And I'm going to go ahead and keep that number in my calculator. Is that what you guys got too? The reason why I'm going to keep it in my calculator is if you round it, it would be like 3.1, but I want to make sure that I get the most exact answer. So I'm going to write 3.06 repeating, because that's what it is b to the fourth. So what do I have to do to solve that? Going to raise both sides to the 1/4. All right, so I don't know if you guys know about this function on any of the calculators, the little ones as well. If you have something in there and you want to do something to it, you can use the answer button or you can just leave it in. I'm going to literally leave it and I'm going to just press that and then it will say answer. And I'm going to raise it to the 1/4 power. And so it is not exact. It's 1.323. I'll call that 1.3. So my equation is 7,500 times 1.3 to the x power. Okay, would you guys find out how many bacteria cells would there be after 10 hours? So if I did that, X represents my hours. Sorry. So there would be approximately 103,393 bacteria cells. After that time. Okay, so in a little bit you're going to get some practice, and that is a new thing that we haven't done before. You didn't do that in Algebra 1. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about was interest. You guys have seen the formula before, but I'm going to assume that you've seen the formula before, but I'm just going to review it for you. You never have to memorize that formula. You just have to know what the things mean, okay? So something called compound interest. So how banks calculate interest if you invest your money with them is given by the equation A equals P times 1 plus R over N to the N times T. And there's a lot of things in there. So A is going to be the amount in the account. P is the principal amount invested. That's a fancy word for the initial amount. Goes in front. R is the annual interest rate. And N is the number of compounding periods each year. So let's talk about some ways that interest is compounded. If you see the word annually, do you know what that means? How many times a year is annually? Once a year. So if you see the word annually, that means you're going to use N equals 1. Another way you might see that's kind of common with money problems is quarterly. What do you think quarterly means? Yeah, quarterly means n would be 4. If I said you get your interest monthly, how many months are there in a year? 12. Okay. And so any of those kinds of questions, if you want to know, you could always ask me. Like, I don't know how many times n is, but those are probably the 3 you're going to run across the most. Oh, look, there's 2 example ones. Let's do this one. We're going to just set it up and put it in our calculator. And that's the biggest thing here, guys, is like just knowing or putting it in your calculator correctly. So, first of all, can somebody pick out for me what is the initial amount? So I'm going to find the amount in the account, but I want to know the principal. What's the principal? 5,000. So that's what's going to go in my front here. And then I have a parentheses. And then I'm going to write 1 plus. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my interest rate and I'm going to divide it by n. So I have to figure out my interest rate. 6.5%. So I'm going to change that to a decimal. And then I need to figure out n. This interest is compounded monthly, so what's n going to be? 12. All right, so I'm going to write on here, my interest is 0.065, and then I'm going to divide that by 12. Up top, I have 12 times t, because it's getting monthly forever how many years. So that would be your equation. And really, I'll either ask you to write an equation or I'll ask you to find the amount in a certain amount of time. So this one, I ask for after 20 years. So that's what I'm going to put in for my time. And then I'm going to just see what my calculator tells me about that. Here's one thing I will tell you guys. If you're typing this in, especially the littler calculators or an older calculator, you're going to either want to do 12 times 20 first, or you're going to want to use parentheses. When you type that in. All right, let's do it. Let's make sure we all get the same thing. Okay, I get $18,282, and since it's money, I'll just now, did I say nearest dollar? I didn't. I'll round to the nearest cent. Okay, how are we doing? Does anyone need me to take a look? Okay, so what I'm going to have you do, just to make sure you know how to do that on your own, is I want you guys to take a moment. Would you try this one on your own? And we're going to just make sure we all get the same thing. Yeah, it is what I got. Okay. So, did you get $6,143.56? All right, good. So what I have for you is some practice for you to work on.